And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show, coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas, gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is March the 5th, 64th day of the year. 301 days remain to the year's over with. Now, y'all asked me to do holidays and observances every day because there's always something new. And it's National Cheese Doodle Day, National Absinthe Day. That's a emerald liquid. It promises a mystical experience. St. Piran's Day commemorates the spirit of a revered patron and fosters a sense of unity among Cornwall's residents. Learn what your name means day. Real Film Day, National Potty Dance Day, International Day for Disarmament and Non-Proliferation Awareness, Dissociative Identity Disorder Awareness Day. It gives understanding and compassion for a condition that certainly brings unique challenges. Stop Bad Service Day, Ash Wednesday, National Invest in Veterans Week, Read Across America Week, National Ghostwriters Week, Chocolate Chip Cookie Week, Celebrate Your Name Week, Termite Awareness Week, National Aplastic Anemia and MDS Awareness Week, North Dakota Winter Show, Hearing Awareness Week, Make Mine Chocolate, National Green Week. We're in Ramadan, which is the holy month for Muslims. They fast from sunrise to sunset. Focus on spiritual reflection and community. It's a time for self-improvement and bringing people together in a celebration of faith. Started February 27th, will go on until March 28th. Then it's National Green Week, Carnival of Brazil. Go down to Rio and join the carnival. I'm told it is quite the event. Women in Aviation Week, Newspaper and Education Week, Words Matter Week, Teen Tech Week, National Consumer Protection Week, No More Week. Talking about domestic violence, don't you know? Women in Construction Week, School Breakfast Week, Return Borrowed Books Week, Read an eBook Week, National School Social Work Week, Dental Assistant Recognition Week, National Procrastination Week, Endometriosis Awareness Week, Jewish Book Week, National Professional Pet Sitters Week. Now that is a job to strive for. Cheerleading Week, Will Eisner Week, Writer Letter Appreciation Week, Universal Human Beings Week, Butchers Week, British Pie Week, Telecommuter Appreciation Week, famous people born in this state, Eva Mendes. It's also National Colon Cancer Awareness Month, National Athletic Training Month, Veggie Month, Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, National Reading Month, National Women's History Month, Greek American Heritage Month, Red Cross Month, National Sauce Month, National Nutrition Month, National Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month, National Flower Month, National Noodle Month, National Brain Injury Awareness Month, National Celery Month, National March into Literacy Month. The Great Daffodil Appeal is the March of March. Brings fresh hope as a wave of yellow sweeps across the UK. Flowers are famous for symbolizing hope and support for those battling terminal illnesses. And it's International Mirth Month, Poison Prevention Awareness Month, National Crochet Month, Workplace Eye Wellness Month, Color Therapy Month, Adopt a Rescued Guinea Pig Month, Youth Art Month, Sing with Your Child Month, Read an eBook Month. And I'm all for that, since I've got a bunch of them for sale on the internet. Malignant Hyperthermia Awareness and Training Month, National Ethics Awareness Month, Gender Equality Month, Exotic Winter Fruit and Leeks and Greens Onions Month, Academy Award Month, Berries and Cherries Month, Honor Society Awareness Month, National Play-Doh Recorder Month, National Small Press Month, National School Social Work Month, National Hemophilia Awareness Month, National Peanut Month, National Credit Education Month, National Caffeine Awareness Month, Frozen Food Month, National Umbrella Month, March for Water, Supply Management Month, Expanding Girls' Horizons in Science and Engineering Month, Spiritual Wellness Month, National Optimism Month, Middle Level Education Month, Gardening, Nature, and Ecology Books Month, Listening Awareness Month, Central Tremor Awareness Month, Deep Vein Thrombosis Awareness Month, Mad for Plaid Month, Colic Awareness Month, Trisomy Awareness Month, National Bed Month, International Ideas Month, Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month, National Breast Implant Awareness Month, Employee Spirit Month, Save Your Vision Month, Alport Syndrome Awareness Month, International Brain Tumor Awareness Month, Epilepsy Awareness Month, Endometriosis Awareness Month, National Kidney Month, National Craft Month, National Music in Our Schools Month, and Irish American History Month. There's a lot of celebrations this month. I thought February was bad. Well, in 363 A.D., on this date, Roman Emperor Julian leaves Antioch with an army of 90,000 to attack the Sasanian Empire. This campaign will bring about his own death. Guess you could say the best laid plans don't always come to pass. 1046, Nasir Khusraw begins the 7-year Middle Eastern journey, which he'll later describe in his book, Sephernama. 1279, the Livonian Order is defeated in the Battle of Askrukal by the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. The Livonian Order, for those who are not familiar with it, was an autonomous branch of the Teutonic Order, formed in 1237. From 1435 to 1561, it was a member of the Livonian Confederation. The order was formed from the remnants of the Livonian Brothers of the Sword after their defeat in the Battle of Shulin. They were incorporated into the Teutonic Knights, became known as the Livonian Order in 1237. They're the Teutonic Knights were the German version of the Knights Templar, for those that are not totally familiar with them. 1496, King Henry VII of England issues letters patent to John Cabot and his sons, authorizing them to explore unknown lands. 1616, Nicholas Copernicus's book on the revolution of the heavenly spheres is added to the index of forbidden books, 73 years after it's first published. There's always somebody who wants to tell you what you're supposed to believe and what you can do and what you can't do. 1766, Antonio de Ulloa, first Spanish governor of Louisiana, arrives in New Orleans. 1770, Boston Massacre. 5 Americans, including Crispus Attucks, are fatally shot by British troops in an event that would contribute to the outbreak of the American Revolutionary War. 5 years later, 1811, Peninsula War. French force under the command of Marshal Victor is routed while trying to prevent an Anglo-Spanish-Portuguese army from lifting the siege of Cadiz at the Battle of Barossa. 1824, First Anglo-Burmese War. The British officially declare on Burma. 1825, Roberto Cafresi, one of the last successful Caribbean pirates, is defeated in combat and captured by authorities. 1836, Samuel Colt establishes his first factory to produce recently patented production model revolver, the .34 caliber Patterson. It was always said that Samuel Colt's invention made all men equal. 1850, the Britannia Bridge across the Menai Strait between the island of Anglesey and the mainland of Wales is opened. 1860, Parma, Tuscany, Modena, and Romagna vote in referendums to join the Kingdom of Sardinia. 1868, Mephistopheles, an opera by Arrigo Boita, receives its premiere performance at La Scala. 1872, George Westinghouse patents the air brake. 1906, Moro Rebellion. U.S. Army troops bring overwhelming force against the native Moros in the First Battle of Budaho, leaving only 6 survivors. 1912, Italo-Turkish War. Italian forces are the first to use airships for military purposes. They'd employed them for reconnaissance behind Turkish lines. 1931, the British Raj Gandhi-Irwin Pact is signed. The Gandhi-Irwin Pact was a political agreement signed by Mahatma Gandhi and Lord Irwin, Viceroy of India. It was signed before the Second Roundtable Conference in London in March of 1931. Before this, Irwin, the Viceroy, had announced in October 1929 a vague offer of dominion status for India, with an unspecified future and a roundtable conference to discuss a future constitution. Second roundtable conference was held in September to December 1931 in London. This conference marked the end of the civil disobedience movement in India. Well, Gandhi and Lord Irwin actually had 8 meetings that totaled 24 hours. Although Gandhi was impressed by Irwin's sincerity, the terms of the pact fell manifestly short of what Gandhi had prescribed as the minimum for a truce. He did manage to have over 90,000 political prisoners released under the Gandhi-Irwin pact. All right. 1933, on this date, Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party receives 43.9% at the Reichstag elections, which allows the Nazis to later pass the Enabling Act and establish a dictatorship. 1939, Spanish Civil War. The National Defense Council seizes control of the Republican government in a coup d'etat. They have the intention of negotiating an end to the war. 1940, 6 high-ranking members of the Soviet Politburo, including Joseph Stalin, signed an order for the execution of 25,700 Polish intelligentsia, including 14,700 Polish POWs. This is what became known as the Katyn Massacre. 1942, World War II. Japanese forces captured Batavia, capital of the Dutch East Indies, which is left undefended after a draw of the KNIL garrison and Australian Black Force Battalion to the Buitenzorg and Bamberg. 1943, World War II. General strike and protest march in Athens against rumors of forced mobilization of Greek workers for work in Germany. This resulted in clashes with the Axis occupation forces and a collaborationist police. Next day, the decrees withdrawn. 1944, World War II. Red Army begins the Uman-Batosani offensive in the western Ukrainian SSR. That's Soviet Socialist Republic, don't you know? 1946, Cold War. Winston Churchill coins the phrase Iron Curtain in his speech at Westminster College in Missouri. 1953, Joseph Stalin, the longest-serving leader of the Soviet Union, died in his dacha in Moscow after suffering a cerebral hemorrhage 4 days before. 1957, Sutton Wick air crash at Blackburn Beverly of 53 Squadron, Royal Air Force, crashes into the village of Sutton Wick in Berkshire, which is now Oxfordshire, killed most of the crew and passengers and 2 local residents. And as I've always said, if a plane falls on you, you're having a really bad day. 1960, Indonesian President Sukarno dismissed the Dewan Perwakilan Rakyat, 1955 democratically elected parliament, and replaced with the DPRGR, the parliament of his own selected members. That's one way to get your bills passed. 1963, American country music stars Patsy Cline, Hawkshaw Hawkins, Cowboy Copas, and their pilot Randy Hughes are killed in a plane crash in Camden, Tennessee. 1963, Aeroflot Flight 191 crashes while landing at Ashgabat International Airport, killed 12 people. 1965, March Intifada. A leftist uprising erupts in Bahrain against the British colonial presence. 1966, BOAC Flight 911, a Boeing 707 aircraft, breaks apart in midair due to clear air turbulence and crashes into Mount Fuji, Japan. Killed all 124 people on board. 1967, Lake Central Airlines Flight 527 crashes near Marseille, Ohio, killed 38 people. 1968, Air France Flight 212 crashes into Le Grand Souffle, killing all 63 people. 1970, the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons goes into effect after ratification by 43 nations. 1973, in Iberia, McDonnell Douglas DC-9 collides in midair with a Spantex Convair 990 Coronado over Nantes, France, kills all 68 people on board the DC-9. That included music manager Michael Jeffrey. 1974, Yom Kippur War. Israeli forces withdraw from the west bank of the Suez Canal. 1978, the Landsat 3 is launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. 1979, Soviet probes Venera 11, Venera 12, and a German-American solar satellite Helios 2 were all hit by off-the-scale gamma rays, leading to the discovery of soft gamma repeaters. 1981, the ZX81, a pioneering British home computer, is launched by Sinclair Research and would go on to sell 1.5 million units around the world. 1982, Soviet probe Venera 14 lands on Venus. 1991, Aeropostal Alas de Venezuela Flight 109 crashes to Venezuela, killed 45 people. 1993, Bel Air Macedonian Airlines Flight 301 crashes at Skopje International Airport in Petrovic, North Macedonia, killed 83 people. 2001, in Mina, Saudi Arabia, 35 pilgrims are killed in a stampede on the Jamarat Bridge during the Hajj. 2002, earthquake in Mindanao, Philippines, kills 15 people and injures more than 100. 2003, in Haifa, 17 Israeli civilians are killed in the Haifa Bus 37 suicide bombing. 2011, an Antonov AN-148 crashes in Russia's Alexeyevsky district, Belgorod Oblast, during a test flight, killed all 7 people on board. 2012, Tropical Storm Arena, kills over 75 as it passes through Madagascar. 2012, 2 people are killed and 6 more injured in a shooting at a hair salon in Bucharest, Romania. 2018, Syrian Civil War. Syrian Democratic Forces paused the Deir el-Zor campaign due to the Turkish-led invasion of Afrin. 2012, Pope Francis begins a historical visit to Iraq amid the COVID-19 pandemic. 2021, 20 people are killed and 30 injured in a suicide car bombing in Mogadishu, Somalia. 2023, the 2023 Estonian parliamentary election is held with 2 center-right liberal parties gaining an absolute majority for the first time. And in 2023, a group of 4 prisoners escaped from the Nutsklot civil prison before being caught the next day. Well, that ends our little history segment for the moment. We're going to see if there's any news worth mentioning. Well, in yesterday's State of the Union, the Democrats made absolute asses of themselves, waving signs that said Trump lies and this and that and the other. Al Green of Texas, not the singer, the politician, started ranting and raving and waving his cane in the air and got ejected from what the speech was going to be. And he is somehow proud of making an ass of himself. Both independents and Republican voters reacted to Trump declaring that there's only 2 genders, male and female. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston said he was open to making adjustments to how releases are conducted after a gang member assaulted federal officers. He was an illegal immigrant, suspected Tren de Aragua gang member. Mayor, his policy allowed him to walk free, and he allegedly went on to assault federal officers shortly after that. Well, computers are a wonderful thing. They allow so much to be done. But when they decide to act up, that's time to bring out the hammer. And I'm about ready to take a hammer to this computer that I use for news feeds, because it will give me everything under the sun that you can imagine except what I need. Now, Trump earned largely positive reaction to his speech yesterday, but the ejected Democrats' behavior is widely deemed inappropriate. They acted like children. Supreme Court has said Trump cannot freeze nearly $2 billion in foreign aid through USAID to pay for some of the stupidest programs anybody ever came up with. Let's see. Even the liberals are mocking the protests and disruptions during the speech. It was just idiotic. Colombia is still battling the radical activists. They've limited entry to former Israeli leaders' visit as Trump weighs pulling $5 billion in federal funding to the university. He said earlier this week that federal funding will stop for any university that allows illegal protests. Now, more than 100 protesters gathered outside the Columbia University building yesterday in response to an appearance from former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, the university student newspaper reported. They want to get their point across. There is a boycott, 40-day boycott, called against Target. It began today. And what's got the protesters upset? The rolling back of DEI policies. They don't see any reason for fairness in hiring decisions. A View co-host has hit the Democrats for not just walking out on Trump after Green was removed. You know, the people on The View are kind of like AOC. They can solve every single problem in the world with some of the most stupid statements you'd ever want to see. Well, I think that is pretty much. Several Democrats were pressed to define woman, and they couldn't. And there's a move afoot among the liberals to do away with the word woman. And I forget what it is they want to replace it with, but it was something equally ridiculous. Well, as I mentioned, today is Ash Wednesday, which is a big celebration in the Catholic Church. Well, it's no secret that I'm from Tennessee, originally. And there's a very famous event that happened in Robertson County, Tennessee. The Bell Witch haunting. This was a spirit that harassed a family for years, exhibited violence, intelligence, curiosity, and even said to have committed murder. Now, there are numerous variations on the theme of haunting that have emerged over the years to explain the phenomena of the Bell Witch. This spirit became a staple of folklore in Tennessee and, in fact, across the southeastern U.S. About 1817, John Bell Sr. moved his family from North Carolina to Robertson County, Tennessee. And on an otherwise ordinary day during the first year he lived on that property, He was inspecting his cornfield and saw a strange animal. So he shot at it, but the animal disappeared. After nightfall, the family heard banging on the outside of their cabin and ran out to see what it was, and they didn't find anything. But strange visitations started almost nightly. The Bell children swore they heard rats gnawing on their bedposts, and bedding was stripped and thrown on the floor, and the faint voice of an old woman was heard singing gospel hymns. Well, the youngest Bell child, Betsy, felt the Bell witch wrath. She was physically assaulted, slapped in the face, had her hair pulled. When the attacks subsided, she was left with bruises and scratches. Father confided in a neighbor by the name of James Johnston, who spent the night in the cabin experiencing a visitation and shouting, "In the name of the Lord, what are you and what do you want?" Well, he didn't get a response. Bell Witch is said to have manifested herself to soldier and future President Andrew Jackson, who visited the family. Her voice grew stronger, and she was heard singing hymns and quoting the scripture. She also repeated word for word the text of 2 sermons being preached simultaneously 13 miles apart. Well, she particularly disliked John Bell Sr., whom she attacked repeatedly. When he died in 1820, she gloated that a vial of poison had been used to silence old Jack Bell. She haunted his funeral, laughing and singing a song about brandy until the last mourner departed. When Betsy Bell became engaged, the Bell Witch expressed displeasure, disrupted the courtship until Betsy called off the wedding. In 1821, the spirit appeared to Lucy, John Bell Sr.'s widow. Said she'd come back in 7 years. And she did reemerge in 1828, spending most of her time with John Bell Jr. Well, she talked about a spiritual awakening, discussed Christianity, and accurately predicted the coming of the Civil War. Well, after 3 weeks, during her second visit, the Bell Witch departed. She said she'd come back in 107 years to visit the closest living family relative in 1935. That relative, Dr. Charles Bailey Bell of Nashville, Tennessee, wrote a book on the Bell Witch. But that is the only information can be found about that descendant. 2 centuries after her first manifestation, the Bell Witch legend still fascinates a lot of people. And the cause of the haunting still remains a mystery. But there's no question that something was going on because too many people heard it. Well, from the Bell Witch, let's go to the Exorcism of Roland Doe. It was the late 1940s. A troubled teenage boy experienced terrifying paranormal phenomena that would influence an iconic book and movie decades later. The August 20th, 1949 edition of the Washington Post carried a story about the unnerving saga of a boy who was only 14 who had endured a horrific demonic possession. William Peter Blatty, a student at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., was intrigued. That same William Peter Blatty who published The Exorcist, an iconic work of horror, using the boy's story as a basis for the chilling narrative. The 1973 feature film followed, which rocked moviegoers. And the real story is no less disturbing than what was seen on the silver screen. Began in 1949 when a boy known publicly as Roland Doe was living with his family in Cottage City, Maryland. Now, some accounts allege that his real name of the subject was Ronald Hunkler, but he was variously known as Roland Doe, Robbie Mannheim, and a number of other pseudonyms. Had a close relationship with an aunt, Harriet or Tilly, a spiritualist who introduced him to the Ouija board mysticism. And soon after Aunt Tilly died, Roland began experiencing strange phenomena. Scratching sounds were heard under his bed, and religious pictures flew off the walls, and The episodes intensified, and his mother and grandmother witnessed the manifestations, including the sounds of marching feet and drum beats while the three lay in bed. Well, Roland's bedroom became the center of the disturbances. The mattress shook, sheets were raised, stretched tightly. Roland developed scratches and burns on his body. Words appeared to be scrawled into his skin. He spoke in a guttural voice, sang unfamiliar songs, and even spoke Latin. Well, the distraught family called in their Lutheran pastor, who brought Roland to his home for observation. And the Reverend confirmed the situation, referred him to a Roman Catholic priest. Situation worsened, though. A portrait of Satan appeared on Roland's leg as he convulsed and spewed foul language. And during the first attempt by a Catholic priest at exorcism, Roland broke free of hand restraints, tearing away a bed spring and slashing the arm of a priest. When the word Louis appeared on Roland's body, the family sought help from relatives in St. Louis, Missouri, and where their residence on Roanoke Drive became known as the Exorcist House. A trio of priests fought these supposed dark forces, and during the course of multiple exorcisms, Roland displayed tremendous strength, broke the nose of one of the priests. The last exorcism occurred at Alexian Brothers Hospital in April of 1949. Finally, Roland was freed and related an incredible vision of St. Michael defeating Satan and his minions in battle. Well, after he was freed of the possession, as it were, Roland carried on a normal life, married, and worked for the U.S. government. At least 48 witnesses observed strange phenomena during the course of the possession, though, and in fact, one of the priests kept a diary that gave startling details. Well, let's go from possession to talking about a poltergeist, and specifically the Rosenheim poltergeist, which was apparently triggered by the presence of a young secretary, created disturbances in a Bavarian law office. Well, lights began to flicker, a painting rotated on its wall mounting, the copier spontaneously leaked fluid, and the heavy filing cabinet moved inexplicably. As a result, the law office of Sigmund Adam in the Bavarian town of Rosenheim, Germany, couldn't conduct business as usual. Further, staff members denied making repeated calls to a time-of-day telephone numbers the firm was charged for each one of the calls. And eerily, on further inspection of records, it was determined that the calls were sometimes made in rapid succession, sometimes as many as 6 per minute. Well, as you might guess, the questions mounted. More than 600 calls were made during a 5-week period, even though the phone was unplugged. In one 15-minute interval, the number was dialed 46 times, an impossible feat for the technology of the late 1960s to accomplish. Baffled, Attorney Adam allowed parapsychologist Hans Bender of the Institute of Paranormal Research in Freiburg to investigate. Bender attributed the phenomenon to recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, or RSPK, and the source of the poltergeist disturbance was tracked down to Secretary Anna Marie Strabo, 19-year-old woman who was experiencing anxiety over a recently dissolved engagement and difficulties with her job. The painting in the office was actually filmed while rotating, and electrical anomalies were recorded by professionals when Strabo entered the premises. The disturbances occurred from the summer of 1967 to January of 1968, and Bender labeled them as the work of a typical poltergeist. He believed the energy that caused them emanated from the secretary and was a result of her discontent. Strange occurrences coincided with Strbo's presence in the office, and when she left her employment with the firm, the phenomena quit. However, as other reported, electrical power surges took place at her subsequent employers. She reportedly married in 1969, and no more reports of strange occurrences surfaced. Well, the Rosenheim poltergeist has been the subject of severe criticism, suggesting that Bender's investigation was flawed. Article in the German weekly newspaper Der Zeit, published in April 1970. The authors asserted they visited the law office and found wires attached to various objects that, when manipulated, will cause them to move. And another stated no complete report of the Bender investigation has ever been made public. And a third author asserted that equipment used to measure changes in electrical current had been produced fraudulently. Direct evidence of a hoax. Well, neither proven beyond doubt nor totally debunked, the Rosenheim poltergeist remains the object of curiosity to this day. I do find it interesting that a 19-year-old girl who was upset over a lost love could cause these type of problems. But then again, all things are possible. Well, from haunted law offices, let's go to haunted houses. You know, haunted houses have been something of a fascination for people since ancient times. But the question is there a scientific reason why people often claim to experience supernatural incidents in certain buildings? Now, for the longest, people who have been interested in spooky stories of ghosts and phantoms, they've been just as fascinated by the buildings linked to these tales, some of which have attained celebrity status in their own right over the centuries, thanks to the unexplained, mysterious occurrences that kept happening inside their walls. The earliest known haunted house appears in a letter written by the ancient Roman lawyer and author Pliny the Younger to his patron, Lucius Sura. Pliny recounted the tale of an old house in Athens, Greece. It had been considered uninhabitable for several years because the local residents believed it was haunted by the terrifying specter of an old man bound in chains. Tempted by the low rent and undaunted by the house's creepy reputation, philosopher Athenodorus moved into the house and was visited by the ghost, who beckoned to him, led him to a spot in the courtyard where it disappeared. Well, the next day, Athenodorus and a group of local folks dug up the spot where the ghost had vanished and discovered the skeleton of an old man. It had obviously been murdered. When the bones were carefully reburied according to the custom of the area, the ghost was never seen again. And Athenodorus was able to enjoy his house in peace and quiet. This ancient tale has many of the hallmarks of what would become the haunted house tradition, and particularly the idea that buildings could be haunted by restless spirits who were trapped and unable to move on, either because they died there or had been buried on the premises. Over the centuries, tales about haunted houses have continued to proliferate, with virtually every culture and country having more than one example. Probably the best-known haunted houses, of course, are in Britain, where a preoccupation with the country's famously violent history has imbued hundreds of buildings, from grand castles to humble terraced houses with a sinister reputation, allegedly leading almost half the population to believe that a building could be haunted. Meanwhile, although America's history has been arguably a little less eventful, it also has far more than its share of haunted houses, many of which, such as Southern plantation mansions, are linked to the darker side of the nation's past, and others, such as the house in the heart of the Amityville horror story, are allegedly a testament to more recent traumas. According to a Time magazine article, the Whaley House in San Diego, which was built in 1857, is the most haunted house in America, thanks to a number of tragic events that have occurred within its walls and rumors of strange noises and other phenomena. Well, I grew up in what you might consider a plantation house in Tennessee, and I was always seeing and hearing strange things. And my grandmother said I was just crazy and I grew out of it, but I turned it into a business instead. And meanwhile, in South Africa, ghost stories abound about the 17th century Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town, which is believed to be the oldest existing building in the country, and it has numerous links to South Africa's bloody history, having been used as both a prison and an army barracks. A lot of soldiers who had been posted there reported hearing screams and footsteps and other noises late at night. Other visitors claimed to have felt cold and uneasy in certain areas, and they've seen a spectral soldier and a ghostly woman dressed in gray, believed to be the Lady Anne Bernard, who lived in the castle at the end of the 18th century. And one of the most haunted houses in China is Channel number 81 in Beijing, which had always had a creepy reputation in the city, but became more widely famous in 2014 after the horror film The House That Never Dies was set there. The house is allegedly haunted by the ghost of a young woman who took her own life and is apparently so spooky even a group of Chinese Red Guards who stayed there in the 1960s fled after just a few days. It was alleged that other visitors to the house had mysteriously vanished, never to be seen again. And there are many reputedly haunted houses in other parts of Asia, such as the Morgan House in Kalimpong, a colonial mansion said to be haunted by the restless spirit of its first owner, Mrs. Morgan, who's said to have been murdered by her husband. Maybe the most famous haunted house in Malaysia is the Kinarut Mansion, a room believed by some to be haunted by Hantu Trigger, a Malay ghost that takes the form of a tree. Well, there's a Pontianak, a sad Malay vampiric spirit who's said to be the ghost of a woman who died during pregnancy. While a lot of folks believe houses can become haunted, usually either because of a traumatic event like a murder or fatal accident occurring within their walls, or more romantically because an individual was so attached to the building they either refused to leave or decided to return after their death, other folks are of the opinion that hauntings are caused by more prosaic factors, many of which can simply be linked to the age of most of the properties, which makes them more susceptible to drafts, well as creaks and groans and other unexpected noises. Meanwhile, some researchers suspect that the exposure to carbon monoxide may be at the heart of many alleged hauntings. Sufferers experiencing lightheadedness and hallucinations and feelings of dread and other symptoms that have often been linked to allegedly haunted houses. The fact that many reports of haunted houses have their origins in the Victorian area has also caused some researchers to wonder if the substances involved in gaslighting may be to blame, as in large doses they could presumably have caused mild hallucinations and other physical symptoms such as lethargy, depression, disassociation, and intense sadness. All these are commonly associated with hauntings. Other sensations such as allegations of being touched or pushed by invisible forces or seeing objects moving by themselves are more difficult to explain, of course. But they could possibly also potentially be due to sensory hallucinations or physical ailments such as restless leg syndrome or even dementia. It's also true that rich and fascinating history of some of the haunted buildings can create a form of confirmation bias that makes some more sensitive and imaginative visitors susceptible to believing they've experienced a supernatural event. One famous incident in the gardens of Versailles was when two women claimed to have encountered Marie Antoinette and various members of her entourage. It's also true that just the knowledge that a building is reputed to be haunted might be enough to cause some sensitive visitors who are now in a heightened sense of alert and apprehension to believe they have also experienced a ghostly encounter. Other cases, it may be that walking dreams or hypnagogia, a rare sensory illusion that commonly occurs in the brief period between sleep and true wakefulness, and which can cause lucid dreams or sleep paralysis and even hallucinations, may be involved in many alleged hauntings, as sufferers often talk about feeling or even seeing presences around them while in this state, or they might experience feelings of intense fear, sadness, and depression, all of which are commonly said to be felt by people in haunted houses. Whatever the truth might be, even in an increasingly cynical age such as this one, haunted houses continue to fascinate with cynics and believers alike, flocking to visit them in the hopes of either debunking the myths or enjoying a spectral encounter all their very own. Although in the past, the local haunted house would usually be avoided by most of the community. The only thrill-seeking children and teenagers passing through its doors. Nowadays, haunted houses are big business. Several thousand operated as tourist attractions in America alone. In the UK, mentioning the fact that a building is haunted is usually seen as a huge draw, especially if it's possible to spend the night. Not everybody's a fan of it, though. 1991, an American court case ruled that sellers must disclose to potential buyers if the property has ever allegedly been haunted. This can affect its future value. This is properly known as the Ghostbuster ruling. Came about when a New York woman sold her house without informing the new owner. The house had been a local reputation being haunted by at least 3 ghosts, including a soldier from the American War of Independence. And she said she and her family had claimed numerous times over the years to have experienced paranormal incidents in the house. When the new owner discovered the truth, he was forced to take legal action in order to back out of the sale, which caused so much publicity that the estate agents quickly found themselves inundated with other prospective buyers, all keen to own a haunted house all their very own. Well, one example of a haunted house is the Carson Mansion. When people think of haunted houses, they often picture a spooky Gothic mansion with ornate gables and turrets, and maybe not realizing that the prototype for this image is an actual house in California. Built in the mid-1880s in the town of Eureka, the Carson Mansion was the brainchild of a wealthy businessman who wanted a grand mansion in the then highly fashionable and ornate Queen Anne architectural style, an offshoot of the Eastlake style. That was intended to invoke the rambling, asymmetrical, romantic appearance of baronial British architecture with porches and spindly Gothic detailing, Dutch gables, stained glass windows and towers, all of which we now often associate with haunted houses. And although this ornate style has been derided over the years, the Carson Mansion is now much admired. It's been described as one of the finest examples of 19th century architecture in America. But however, you might look at it, despite its creepy appearance, which has resulted in it appearing as, although heavily doctored on posters and book covers and other media, even led to the inspiring the haunted and mystic manor in Hong Kong's Disneyland. There have been no known reports of any paranormal activity inside the Carson Mansion, which is now owned by a private members club. And if you wonder why people would buy a haunted house, it comes down to each to their own. Well, let's talk about Malahide Castle. An 800-year-old former fortress. It's said to be the most haunted castle in Ireland. It's said to have 5 terrifying ghosts. Well, the imposing castle to the north of Dublin was the seat of the Talbot family for 791 years, from 1185, when the land was first granted to Richard Talbot by Henry II, until 1976, when the estate was sold to the Irish state. And thanks to this long history and its position close to the Irish capital, Malahide has witnessed more than its fair share of drama and turmoil over the centuries. It's included the Battle of the Boyne in 1690, during which the Talbots came out on the side of the deposed Catholic King James II, only to lose all but one of the 14 male members of the family that fought that day. 40 years earlier, in 1649, the castle was seized by Oliver Cromwell and given to his supporter, the MP for Yarmouth, Miles Corbett, who signed the death warrant for Charles I. He was subsequently hung, drawn, and quartered for regicide 2 years after the restoration of Charles II. Said that Corbett's spirit not only appears in the castle's great hall on the anniversary of his execution, but he also said to manifest in full armor that then falls apart around him in 4 pieces, apparently reflecting the gruesome manner of his death. Another one of the castle's ghosts allegedly dates from the 16th century, is said to be the spirit of a dwarf jester called Puck. Puck fell in love with the beautiful Lady Eleanor Fitzgerald, and he either took his own life after being rejected or was murdered by her family to prevent them from eloping. But nonetheless, he is said to be a mischievous ghost who loves to prank visitors and appear in photographs. But the best-known phantom at Malahide is said to be the ghost of Walter Hussey, Lord Galtrim, and his love, Lady Matilda Plunkett. According to legend, Hussey was killed by a love rival on the way to his wedding, and now haunts the halls of Malahide, clutching a fearful spill wound in his side and groaning in agony. Lady Matilda also haunts the castle, along with her second husband, with whom she had an extremely stormy relationship, to the extent that she's reported to have been seen chasing his ghost through the castle corridors. Though the female ghost said to be haunting the castle is much more sedate, a beautiful young lady in white. Her portrait hangs in the great hall. She has allegedly been seen walking through the castle at night. I have to say, if I got up to walk through the castle and met a ghost coming the other way, I might have a few things to say. Not all of them worth that can be repeated. Well, let's talk about Himeji Castle, a beautiful Japanese castle. It's said to be the location for the chilling ghost story that inspired the terrifying horror film The Ring. Now, this castle was founded in 1333, so beautiful that it's commonly also known as the White Heron Castle because its elegant, distinctive white facade is said to resemble a heron soaring through the sky. Despite its tranquil appearance, it was designed for war, don't you know? The castle boasts a unique defensive system that involves multitudes of loopholes, allowing defenders to rain arrows down on their attackers. Well, there's a perplexing maze of paths around its keep, walkways that go back on themselves. Meanwhile, the distinctive Kawara ceramic tiles on the roof are also said to be imbued with magical properties intended to keep evil spirits at bay and protect the building's inhabitants from attack. Well, despite these magical protections, Himeji is also said to be the location for one of the most famous Japanese ghost stories of all, and that's that of Okiku and the Well. Now, there's several versions of this legend, but one of the most common is that the beautiful maid-servant Kiku caught the eye of her master, Tessen Oyama, who tried to make her his mistress behind his wife's back. When Kiku refused, he hid one of his wife's precious gold plates, which Kiku had on her job of looking after, and told the unfortunate girl if she didn't agree to his request, he'd tell his mistress that she'd stolen it. Well, when she couldn't find the hidden plate and terrified of her mistress's anger, the distraught Okiku threw herself down the castle well, which confounded Tessen, who decided to return the plate and continued to blame Okiku for its absence. Well, shortly after her suicide, I got things falling on me here. Let's try one more time. There we go. Well, as I say, shortly after her suicide, she began to haunt the castle. She'd be seen dressed in white with her hair hanging loose and dismembered hands and feet, dragging herself out of the well. And she'd make her way on all fours to the cupboard where the 9 remaining gold plates were kept. When she reached them, she'd count them and then scream in anguish when she reached the spot where the 10th missing plate should have been. And surprisingly, Tessen was driven mad with guilt, but still refused to return the stolen plate, with the consequence that Okiku said to still haunt the castle to this day, still looking for the plate. Well, let's talk about Glamis Castle, ancestral home to the Earls of Strathmore, thought to be the most haunted stately home in Scotland. Although beautiful, romantic, Glamis Castle is now perhaps best known for the childhood home of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, birthplace of her younger daughter, Princess Margaret. Over the years, it's also become synonymous with several ghost stories as a result of its connection to Scotland's dark and bloody past, and it's mentioned in Shakespeare's Macbeth. You know, talking about the Queen Mother, I met her when I was in England. Very nice lady. I don't think she said 2 words. In the 11th century, Glamis was a royal hunting lodge. In 1034, the Scottish King Malcolm II was either murdered or died after escaping a nearby battle. Castle remained in royal hands until 1372, when it was granted to Robert II's son-in-law, Sir John Lyon, Thane of Glamis, who replaced the lodge with a castle. The Lyon family remained close to the royal Stuarts until the 16th century, when James V, father of Mary, Queen of Scots, had Janet Douglas, wife of the 6th Lord Glamis, arrested for treason and witchcraft and burned at the stake in Edinburgh Castle. That was in July of 1537. And after such a violent end, it's no wonder a lot of folks believe the mysterious Grey Lady that haunts the chapel and clock tower Glamis is the wraith of the unfortunate Lady Janet. Meanwhile, the west tower of the castle is said to be haunted by the specter of Earl Beardy, who is said to be Alexander Lindsay, 4th Earl of Crawford, a man of such evil character that on at least one occasion he hunted one of his own servants before setting his dogs on the unfortunate man. That victim is also said to haunt the castle. According to legend, when the wicked Earl and his cronies committed sacrilege by playing cards on the Sabbath, it attracted the attention of the devil, who disguised himself as a fellow gambler and won the Earl's soul, forcing him to play cards for all eternity. I heard a similar story about the ship that keeps trying to go around the Cape of Good Hope. Maybe the little spine-tingling legend associated with the castle is that of the monster Glamis, who's said to have been the true heir to the earldom, but was so deformed his parents had him raised in secret in one of the castle's many hidden rooms. According to legend, an unfortunate maidservant accidentally saw the boy and had her tongue cut out to ensure she never tell anybody else what she had seen, eventually becoming yet another one of the castle's many ghosts herself, with more than one visitor claiming to have seen a spectral woman with a bleeding mouth. It's said the identity of the monster is passed on to every heir to the earldom when he comes of age. But the Queen Mother's own father once saying, if you could even guess the nature of the castle's secret, you'd get down on your knees and thank God it's not yours. Well, on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow, and once again, you'll be listening to Ken Hudnall and the Ken Hudnall Show. Until then, have a truly great evening.